I can hardly believe it myself. I am here for it. You could potentially argue that I helped encourage it. But here's where we are. We have people contacting me to give Peter Dunn, rucker extraordinaire, tips for his rucking practices. Let's bring Pete and Kristen into this conversation. We have to make sure that Pete is safe and doing this as well as possible because we can't do a show without him. His name's on it. So, Pete, are you interested in hearing the tips that have been submitted to me to further your rucking career?
I am. I mean, in full disclosure, and I've not given up on rucking. I just haven't rucked this week. But I think it's important because I don't want to be a poser. But I'll take the tips. Give me the tips.
Tips from former military members who know a thing or two about rucking and don't accuse you of stolen valor at all, but they are.
Can I get time out? I was watching stolen valor videos 2 nights ago when I was grilling from the guy that you sent me, Dame.
Yeah.
Kristen. Okay, Kristen. Let me set this up. Dame, you changed my life when you send me this guy. So this guy is a former Navy SEAL, and he just sits at home at his computer, and he's got his database, and people will call him. They'll be at like a Panera. This is the one I was watching today. Mm-hmm. One of his buddies sees a guy with some phony whatever, and so the guy just calls him, and then he's like, "Hey, are you ready?" And then the revealer guy goes to his computer, and then they put him on speakerphone, and they say to the fake guy, "Hey, one of your SEAL buddies wants to talk to you," which is apparently like a thing because I don't know. I'm. And then they starts chatting, and then the guy's like, "No, you. What team were you on?" And the guy's like, "I was on training Bud's course 16." And he's like, "Oh, how old are you?" And the guy's like, "I'm 48." And he's like, "So you went through Bud's when you were 2?" You know, like because he has all this stuff, and then he's like, "You take that jacket off right now, and you never wear it again." The guy's like, "Okay, yes, sir." It's the greatest thing ever. Why is this not a primetime show?
It could be.
That's amazing.
Anyway, back to your rucking tip. Sorry.
Rucking tip number 1. If you are going to stretch yourself and go on a longer ruck, put gallons of water in your ruck so that you can not only stay hydrated, but you can drink as you come on the way back, you can drink it and lessen the weight in the ruck to try and make it more achievable. So you can go for further distance, stay hydrated, return all in one day.
You know, there's another method that I think gets the same thing accomplished is a bottle of whiskey. Yes, Kristen. Yes.
Oh, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, but in Carmel, in the rucking community, you can use like an Osprey backpack and like a Camelback within. You don't need to use a gallon of water.
And you just fill it with Evian. That's right.
Does Evian sell gallons, or do you have to buy a whole bunch of smaller bottles?
Tip number 2.
Number 2, I actually mentioned this one to Mrs. Advice, and she was familiar with this one. So maybe this is something you already know, but if you start cramping, have a whole bunch of yellow mustard packets with you and just eat them straight, and it will immediately stop cramping.
Yeah, because you're going to be vomiting.
I've heard that before. And so first of all, there's 2 things that have become evident. A, I'm not going on long enough rucks.
Right.
That required me to lessen the weight via losing liquids. Number 2, I haven't cramped yet. So am I? Apparently, I'm not going hard enough.
Probably not. Doesn't sound like it.
How long do you ruck for?
Well, this is where about an hour usually, but it doesn't feel like long enough, you know?
But see, that's where you should really be, your body should be taking in fuel probably after like 40 minutes. So.
Yeah, fuel deficit is definitely what I'm suffering from, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Are there any more tips, Dame? Because those are solid ones.
Those are the 2 that I've had submitted for me so far. But if you have more, ask Pete at askpete.com. No.
Kristen and I did a live thing on the internet yesterday. Kristen, how'd that go?
It wasn't the most technologically advanced show we've ever done. That's for sure. There were barking dogs. There
Oh.
were audio issues. There were video issues.
It was a nightmare, Dame. It was like anything that could go wrong went wrong.
Correct.
We handled it pretty well.
I do agree with that.
But geez, it was frustrating. Kristen did great. I was struggling, of course. Let's do a show. I got stuff to do. Sorry, Jeremiah. Jeremiah's wife is sending me text, or not text, that got aggressive. Sorry, Jeremiah. Sarah, his wife, Sarah, is sending me tweets about Jeremiah, whether he is rucking or not, because he's dragging the family's luggage around on a family vacation. Oh, there's Jeremiah right there. I literally didn't see him pop up, and then I started talking about him. Hello, Rucker. Okay, let's start the show. Can we do your segment, Dame? Your little thing? Well,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
okay. Oh, hello, Caitlin. You got a handsome guy in that picture with Caitlin.
He's been there the whole time.
Caitlin has to run 10 miles in the hills of Brown County this weekend. Go, Caitlin.
I can't tell from that picture. Does he have a good haircut? Is that what's going on there? Is that like a little boobop at the top?
I think that they've been maybe dancing at a wedding, and maybe it's just like the aftermath of like being hot.
No.
I don't think his hair usually sits like that.
Okay. In 3, 2, 1. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here's how the show works. You email us at askpete@petetheplanner.com. That's askpete@petetheplanner.com. And, who knows what happens. Possibly we answer your question on the air with my co-hosts. The sister of Caitlin Elanius, Kristen Elanius, joins us now. Hello, Kristen.
Hello, Pete.
And Damian Dunn, no siblings. Hello, Dame.
Hello, Pete.
But he is my son. He is not, but people think he is. All right, Dame, this week at an all-team meeting here at your money line, you did a little financial education for the troops, and you said, listen, people, I don't think you fully understand the difference between a 15 and 30-year mortgage when you get down to the math. And you shed some light on that topic, and we said, you know what? I think the general public could hear this as well. Dane, what do we need to know about a 15-year mortgage?
Well, it's better, clearly. Okay, you want details? Okay, I'll give you some details. You know what? Let's do this in the format of a pop quiz. If you are driving, please keep at least one hand on the steering wheel at all times. All right. What percentage of your very first mortgage payment goes directly to interest? That's all it covers.
Okay, so are you talking about on a 15-year mortgage?
Yep.
Or
And a 30.
And a 30.
Yep.
What percent? So we're given two answers, right?
Yep. Payment number one.
Payment number one.
For the 30-year mortgage, what percentage of it is interest only? Kristen has a question already because, of course, she does. Kristen.
Well, I just want to score well on this quiz. How much money did I put down on this loan?
Dame, I don't have the heart to say it.
What?
It doesn't matter.
No, for a percentage. It does matter.
No, it doesn't, because the loan is 100% of the loan. The loan is 100%. Aren't you in the market of buying a home right now?
Yeah.
As I was saying, what percentage of your very first mortgage payment, 30 and 15 years, goes directly to interest, not principal, regardless of your down payment?
I'm joined on the show by certified financial planner Kristen Elanius.
You'll have my resignation by the end of the day.
Oh my gosh. All right. It's all right. Hey, it's been a long week. It's been a long week.
Absolutely.
All right, Dame. I happen to know the answer to this, but illuminate us with the
30 year. 79.3% of your very first mortgage payment is interest only. That's it. 15 year, 54.5%. That's significantly different in my book, Peter.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When you've got a very long amortized loan, the early payments just crush you with interest. You've got so much interest to have to pay. And that's one of the primary differences between a 30 and a 15 is the fact that it's amortized over a shorter period of time. Therefore, you're just not paying as much interest.
Correct. If the next question, which I kind of put in as a trick question at the all hands meeting, was it what month or year does a 30-year mortgage payment equal 54.5% interest that we have in the very first payment of a 15-year mortgage? Wink, wink. nod, hint, hint, 15 years. You have to pay 15 years worth of payments before your mortgage payment equals the first month payment of a 15-year.
In terms of percentage of interest on that is a trick question, right? Because when you asked in the LT meeting, I was overthinking it, but it's an obvious trick question. And I think what's important to point out here as we're going through this is the loan amount does not matter. The interest rate does not matter. This is 360 payments versus 180 payments.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all we're talking about here. Those are the only variables.
So if the average length of a home ownership in the U.S. is 8 years, median's 13, average home ownership 8 years before you move on to that next TP, what percent of equity ownership would you have in your home if you sell at that time? Assume a 20% down payment, Kristen. 20% down payment.
Okay. Haha.
After 8 years of payments, how much equity ownership would you have in your house on a 30-year mortgage? Kristen, I know you're already looking at this, so I'm not going to ask you to answer. 27.7%. You put down 20% yourself. You only gain 7.7% ownership over the first 8 years.
So that's interesting to me because there's other. You're going to disclaim this. I know you will. This is saying that the home doesn't grow in value.
Correct. Absolutely.
Because if the home were to grow in value, that is a variable that we just can't speak to. And also, like, you know how this doesn't happen as much as it used to because of the way housing prices are. But Dane, when you and I were young and still adults, people would move into a place for 2, 3, 4 years and then move again. Like, it was just crazy common. And you'd buy a house, and you go buy another house, and you go buy another house. It was like very, very common. And the challenge was if you had a 30-year mortgage, you're basically renting because of all the interest that you're paying. And housing prices weren't flying up. They were rather stale. And so with your example there, it's like, if you pick the wrong mortgage and you're going to be there for 2 to 4 years, you're kind of in trouble.
Completely. That's why we always talk about, can you envision yourself in this house for a certain period of time before you're going to sell it and move on to the next spot. 15-year mortgage, by the way, after 8 years, you'll have 51.6% ownership of that house at that point in time. Again, significant difference.
Kristen, real quick, you used to work a lot with the finances of people in the military, and Andy mentions on our live stream here, a lot of folks in the military do just that they explain how that works and why that's the case.
Yeah, that's the case because of the way government housing allowances are generally set up for the military community, but also depending on there's a lot of different factors that go into this, but military families are moving every 2 to 3 years. And so if housing is in really high demand at their what's called their duty station, they might find that, hey, buying a house is actually seemingly the easier thing here. And to Andy's point, I feel that we've seen a lot of this, especially since like the 2008 timeframe, because it tends to work out for people. I have many friends who've bought houses every 3 years for the last 10, 15 years. And they're like, this is the best thing ever. And I'm like, because of when it's happening to you. You wouldn't have thought that, if this would have happened to you in the early 2000s.
Dame?
I already know what you're saying. You're going to say, I can't afford a 15-year mortgage on the house that I am looking at. Totally get it. So in the case, if we use a $350,000 house for our example, you'd have to find a $240,000 house to get the equivalent monthly payment for a 15-year mortgage. So a 30-year mortgage on a $350,000 house, you have to get a $240,000 house for a 15-year mortgage to have the same monthly payment. If you do that math at 8 years for the average home ownership, equity on a 15-year mortgage, you'd have 51.6%. That's $123,840 with a $48,000 down payment of equity compared to $96,950 of equity on a 30-year.
So, when you were going through this at our team meeting the other day, first of all, I love math on the radio. It's literally like my favorite segment. When people hear what you just said, the natural inclination is to go, cool, yeah, but I want the $350,000 house. And that they're so dismissive of the idea of buy less house is immediately dismissed. When in fact, and not to be the old guy here, but I am the old guy here, although Dame's older. The right decision is to buy less house.
Yeah. You're going to spend 20 grand less up front on the down payment, and you're going to have roughly $30,000 more in equity position 8 years in.
You know why this is going at least another half segment? Because the whole reason Dame and I did this is because as Kristen's out looking for houses, we wanted to see if we could rile her up at all. So we're going to come back after the break and see if our comments in the first segment have moved Kristen to get angry and yell at us in the second segment. That is what the show is about today. The show is the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner, and we'll be back right after this. Don't poke her right now. Save it. Change topic. Dame, a lot of people have been wondering. In fact, I was at a networking breakfast yesterday, and today's Friday, so that was Thursday. And I saw one of our listeners, a longtime friend, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I was just listening to you in the car. It's very weird to see you here." And I was like, "I know. I'm south of 96th Street." And he said Dame didn't really have a mouse in his barn, did he? And I was like, no one knows. No one knows because there's no proof.
What is so hard to believe that a mouse might be in a barn in northern Indiana in mid-October? I am a little perplexed by this.
I mean, sure.
It's a shop.
I mean, what do you call it? What do you call it? That's a great question.
Barn most of the time. Every once in a while, I'll say the shop. But
does it have concrete floor?
Yeah.
Wait, is there? Okay, wait. Now I'm not in the know. What in the world? Is there a barns have concrete floors, or do barns have dirt floors? Because I feel like a barn would not have a floor.
Depends.
Yeah.
Some people like to have concrete in a barn. I have recently learned this because it makes it easier. Well, for cattle mostly. We'll just leave it at that.
Damn.
But Dame's is a shop. It's got finished walls, a concrete floor.
Finished. It's got OSB on the wall. It doesn't have anything other than OSB in it.
It's got a what is OSB?
Oriented strand board.
You know what it is. If he showed you a picture,
You would recognize. Yeah, you would be able to see what it is.
By the way, last week's show, of which I got reprimanded by Kristen's special friend for using his government name on the air. You guys were talking about skid steers or whatever, and I thought I knew what it was. And then so later in the day, I had to Google, like, what is a skid steer?
Skiddy.
I'm kind of curious as to what you thought it was.
What did you think?
Do you guys want to know what I think it was?
Yes.
I don't even know how to describe this.
Pull up a picture and show us.
Okay. All right, hold on. I think this is what this is what I thought it was.
And to be clear, he wasn't mad about his government name. He was actually more mad that you didn't know what a salvage title was.
Okay, look, I'm an idiot, guys. I thought it was this. Like,
A pallet jack.
I thought it was a pallet jack.
I mean, it has forks in his defense.
And like, so here's the thing. I used to use this at my dad's plumbing shop, but I didn't know the name of it. But you're steering and like.
And to be fair, it's kind of like an appliance mover. Like, could we have moved a red box with that? I'm really not going to fault you that hard for this one, to be honest.
But what I couldn't figure out is, yeah, you could move a red box with this, but you couldn't lift it into a truck bed. And that's where, okay, so this is all processing throughout the day. And that's why I ended up Googling skid steer. And then I was like, oh, it's like it's like a cute backhoe.
Yeah.
No?
Backhoe? What?
That's what it looks like, a little bobcat.
See, yeah, yep.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. That's funny.
You know, Kristen and I were lamenting earlier this week that we weren't feeling really good, and we were trying to determine if it was allergies or cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Kristen, I said, we've got beans coming off all around us. I'm leaning towards allergies.
His face. It's exactly what you thought.
And I said, that's not a sentence that Pete will have no idea what we're talking about.
We've got beans coming off all around us. None of those words actually fit next to the others. Like, we have beans coming off all around us.
I mean, I wouldn't have said that, but I knew what he meant is the problem.
Okay, give me a second here. We have beans coming off all around us. Let me get a chance here. Andy, it's complicated. I live in Indiana, Pete. Okay, so soybeans being harvested?
Yes.
Yes.
Field of soybeans being harvested.
Jeremiah said another way you could say it is they're running beans.
Absolutely.
Beans.
Oh my gosh. All right. Here's the thing. My dentist, who's my uncle, may he rest in peace, they had a farm. And so as a kid, I used to go in their barn and climb the hay and do all this sorts of stuff. But I was in like kindergarten, first grade, and my farm knowledge sort of stopped. I got stunted with farm knowledge about then. And I've aged since then.
And now you live in the least Indiana place in Indiana.
That's interesting. That's actually, what's weird is part of me thinks Carmel would love that title. I can see it going on the gilded signs. And by the way, the gilded signs at the border of Carmel and Indianapolis, there are gilded signs on the border of Carmel and Indianapolis. Kristen, your face indicates you did not know that.
I don't know that I knew that.
Every border you come into Carmel, it's a green sign trimmed in gold, and it says,
It says Carmel.
It says, "Welcome to Carmel, home of Peter Dunn."
Barely Indiana.
The least Indiana place in Indiana.
There we are.
I will, for those that aren't in on the joke, it is nice to live in Carmel, but I also know how ridiculous the reputation, which is very well earned. And I am at the front of the line of people making fun of it. Just so you know, I'm in on the joke. I realize how ridiculous it is. And people are like, why don't you make fun of this community? It's like, because I don't live there, and I would be a jerk if I made fun of that community. You can make fun of yourself. Alas, let's rile Kristen up on the radio in 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Dame, when you present someone with the idea that if you can't afford a 15-year mortgage, then buy less house, they get frustrated. They dismiss that pretty early. Kristen, you're on the market for another home. How do you get your head around that idea?
It's difficult because as someone who, despite the way I started the first segment, I do have a brain for personal finance. And it's really hard to say that this makes financial sense, but then also understanding that the marketplace that we're in, just like it doesn't support a household buying their first home that they want to stay in for at least 8 years, getting a 15-year mortgage.
I feel like it's possible that you may have done some thought on this and are coming to this discussion with some numbers.
Well, yeah, kind of. And I also think if we worked through them a little bit together, I have 2 numbers of reference, which are the median household income in Indiana and the median home price in Indiana. And do you guys want to guess at either of those numbers?
Oh, we call this segment Pete's Out of Touch. Okay, let's do it. All right, can we at least have Dame guess first?
Have Dame guess first so that your guesses don't seem so out of bounds. Let's go median home price.
Median, not average. Median.
Median.
Okay. You said home price?
Correct.
I
even wrote it down.
250.
I was going to go 280.
Hey, that's pretty good, you guys. 256.
Dame wins. Wow. Okay.
And the median income?
Pete, you go first on this one. I'll let you go first, unless you want me to.
Household income?
Household.
Yes.
68.
60.
67.
Oh,
you guys are not as out of
what?
To be honest. That's pretty good.
Congratulations to me.
Pete the planner.
Oh,
He knows stuff.
You know, it's weird. I don't think I've heard you call me that. And I don't like it.
That's your name.
Oh, no, sometimes it's weird. Okay, what's your point, Chris?
My point is, how does that math, gentlemen?
Are you saying what are you saying? How does it matter? What's the rule of thumb of what your home value needs to be versus your income?
Damien, do you happen to have a mortgage calculator, or could you run math for me?
Yep.
Thank you.
Give me 2 shakes.
Because what I'm saying is, and I could be wrong about this, but how does a household income of $67,000 support a 15-year mortgage median? I just don't think that math is going to math.
It was 267 was the median.
256.
256. How much for the down payment, Kristen?
People aren't putting 20% down. People aren't putting 20% down.
Okay, so you want to go with like the 3% FHA? Is that what are we talking about?
Let's go 5. This person's aggressive.
Math on the radio brought to you by Texas Instruments.
250. What do you say? 250 what?
256, and they saved 5%.
256.
As you're doing this, I do want to make a point here. We're talking about the 15 and 30-year mortgages for at least as far as I'm concerned, for this reason. We're not saying everyone should do it. I'm not saying you're an idiot if you get a 30 over a 15. What I'm saying is, if you're able to get a 15 instead of a 30, you're going to save so much money in interest, and it is a wise financial decision. Not everyone is able to make that financial decision. So you're not dumb or misguided or poor or whatever if you can't do it. It's just, if you can, you should strongly consider it. And with that, Dame, that comes back just more math.
Yeah, Kristen, you've been in the market way more than Pete and I have. What's a reasonable 30-year rate right now?
6.5. They have good credit.
Okay. 6.5%. Mortgaging $243,000 on a 30-year mortgage is $1,535.
You guys, that's 25% of their gross income on a 30-year.
Okay.
We wouldn't recommend them buy the house, period. Much less try to stretch to the 15-year.
Here, this might take us down a really dumb path, but what percentage of a population should be able to afford a home?
Ooh.
I mean, everyone should be able to. There's a distinction with the difference there, a home versus housing. But I mean, whether people should or shouldn't does not take away from the fact that people are going to try to, and Pete, we have this conversation all the time about where people are headed. And there's this collective belief in the personal finance community that people are going to have to be more reasonable. They're going to have to stop doing this or that. No, we are so far past that. That's not going to happen. You have to show people just the consequences of the decisions that they make. And I think people are still going to keep buying houses. Even if we would say, okay, you can't objectively afford this. And we're talking about the median household in Indiana can't afford a 30-year mortgage right now.
I will say that the average rent, according to Google, in Indiana is $1,190 to $1,417.
Yeah, and just for a bit of clarification, when I said what percentage of a population should be able to afford to buy a home is what I meant. I mean that not in a. At some point in time, there was a percentage that answers that question that everyone was somehow comfortable with. I don't know when it was. What was the heyday of housing affordability? I don't know. But at some point in time, there was an answer. Lenders said you had to have this sort of credit score, this sort of financial profile. So there was a stasis. There was this moment in which whatever percentage that was, people kind of collectively agreed with it, other than politicians who said, let's have more affordable housing. And I don't mean that judgmentally. But now it's so far out of whack of who can actually afford to buy a home that whatever that percentage was in its ideal state has had to have come down significantly. I'm making a number up. Let's say that 60% of working Americans at some point in time should have been able to buy a home. It's got to be 39 to 41% now. Is that at all making sense, or am I just flapping my gums?
No, I hear you, and I in case it hasn't been abundantly clear, Pete isn't saying this is okay. This isn't something necessarily that what we are saying is just the way it's going to have to be going forward. And so we would love to have everybody have their own house if they could potentially afford it. That just isn't the situation, the scenario that we find ourselves in at the moment. So what you're saying, Pete, makes sense. And I do remember hearing something very similar to what you're saying, but I have no idea what the timing was on it.
What do you think actually solves, and this is not what we're talking about, but now it is. What do you think actually solves the housing affordability crisis in America? Do you think it's just building more homes? Because that can't be it, because you get businesses buying up and turn them into rentals like that. Is it somehow limiting that? Like, what is it? Kristen has an idea.
Are you really asking me? Because I have a quite politically charged.
Boy, do we want to do this? All right, so you've got a minute to poke the bear. Have at it.
You have to stop letting hedge funds buy single family homes in the United States.
That's politically charged?
It is, yes, because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that the rate, and I can't remember the year, the rate that we're going, how quickly we are going to price the majority of Americans out of ever being able to afford to buy a home. I just feel like maybe we're having this conversation, or you don't feel like this is politically charged, but I don't think that collectively we realize what an issue this is.
It's taken us 15 years on this show to have an interesting discussion, and now we're here. Wow. Okay. So let's everyone just, Dame, calm down.
Sorry.
Let's take a break. Let's come back with this. Like, this is interesting because I agree. And I want to know what would have to be true to have this actually happen. And then we can be cynical and say, could this ever really happen? We'll do all of that next, right here on the Anti-Hedge Fund Home Buyer Workshop. I'm Pete the Planner. I mean, you're right. I'm curious, and I'm not splitting hairs, and I'm not saying no, but I'm just curious why you think that's politically charged. Because I want to understand it, because I don't see the way.
I guess I don't mean like in a way that I think that we would disagree, but I think that quickly that conversation can turn political, because then we get back into like, well, if this can't change, do you combat it by giving the everyday or like the everyman money to be able to step into home ownership? Like, I think it's where that conversation goes that gets political quickly.
Yes, the old solution of giving people more free money.
Okay. So, all right. So I didn't get there fast enough. What you're saying, and I think you just wanted to be respectful, but I think what I'm hearing you say, and I'm going to tread lightly, is you feel like fiscally liberal politicians' solution to this would be to give
tax credits or giveaways. Yeah.
Yes, I think that proposals from that side tend to be based off of the symptoms and not the actual problem.
That's interesting. So the other side of it, maybe we should have this conversation on the radio, because the other side of it, to me, I'm thinking, well, then you get into a regulatory environment.
Which, right, I know.
Yeah. I love that we're not going to solve this.
No,
I love it.
I'm trying to find, before we go back to, I'm trying to look at investor stats. 18%,
go ahead, Kristen. I thought you were going to have to look for
15% of homes in the first quarter of 2024 were investor purchased. And then I want to say it's like in Atlanta, maybe, that like 40% of housing is owned by not individuals. Let me see.
It's similar to, and Jeremiah might know something about this based off of his show. China coming in and buying farm ground in Indiana as well, and it's just going to end up wrecking that side as well. So there's going to be regulation. Indiana might have passed a law on that. Actually, I can't remember. Jeremiah, if you know, chime in.
Started on farmland protection.
Yeah. So I mean, there's issues there for sure, and I think unfortunately, regulation is going to have to step in at some point to protect the interests of the citizens.
I think it'll be, for me, as we explore this of, farmland getting purchased so you can build houses and then rent them out to people. My concern always lies with, I won't be able to then run beans.
Yeah.
How are we going to cut beans if you can't afford it?
This is a fascinating conversation. And it also makes me think of Airbnb a little bit because...
Add that to the list.
I have some hot takes on Airbnb, but I don't think they're radio show worthy. Can I hit you with them now? Have we talked about this in the air recently?
We're going to agree. Go ahead.
I doubt it because I'm an idiot. Okay. Okay. I don't get it. I have no desire to stay. And Dame, you stay in Airbnbs all the time.
I just love Airbnbs.
Do you really?
No, I hate them.
Wait, you stay there all the time.
No, I don't.
You did in Indy once, so that's all the time.
Okay, for certain swim weekends, we have stayed in, I guess they're Airbnbs.
Like, people love it. I don't get it. I just don't get. I do not want to stay, and it's under this really. Let's get weird. So I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to be at an Airbnb, and someone's going to have a camera recording my every move.
It's
going to be in the bathroom, right? Or wherever. And then I start thinking about that. Then I go, no, they won't. And then I get mad that no one would put a camera in there and want to see me in various states of undress. And then I just get confused. Like, do you know what I mean?
You and I don't have the same take. Right?
No, I like a hotel. I like a hotel. I know it's dirty. I don't care. I'm comfortable with that dirt. I don't like the personal nature of sleeping on someone's sheets. I don't, it's so weird to me.
Different than a hotel though.
In my mind, it's different because they got really hot washing machines.
That's fair.
You think?
It's just the bed bugs.
Maybe they're trying to save money and they don't use hot water as much as they used to.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, you're in someone's kitchen and you're like, we brought our own breakfast cereal. And then you're using their spoon for your Cookie Crisps. And that feels unnecessarily intimate, to use another person's spoon for Cookie Crisps.
To be fair, the places that we've stayed in, now that I'm thinking about this, I'm pretty sure are just dedicated Airbnbs. They're not somebody's house that they just vacate for a few days while you decide to come into town. So it's kind of like a hotel.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably keep going.
Probably.
In 3, 2, 1, back on the Pete the Planner show. We're solving none of the world's problems today as we talk through Dame, how do we get here? What percentage of Americans theoretically should be able to pursue home ownership? And then we got into what is making housing so unaffordable. Then we got to hedge funds buying up all property and renting it out and driving prices up. And then we had a really spicy between segment debate. But Kristen, here's where we are. You said, and I think we all agree with you, it's investors buying up properties, which is, skewing the market and then making rental prices higher at the same time. Do you think regulation is possible where a individual versus all of these LLCs and things are the only people who can buy homes? Like that doesn't seem possible to me.
No, it doesn't seem possible. And I also understand that that's not really fair either, right? Because you're not going to be able to regulate it. I'm not saying that I have a great solution, but what I do know is that it makes it more difficult for someone to buy their first home when there are people who own several homes.
I think the two of you wildly underestimate our government's ability to regulate.
Well,
I hear you. And again, this show just keeps weirder today. But like the argument against regulation, right? The argument for deregulation is that the markets will regulate themselves, like that it. In the sense that water will find its level, right? Like that everything will work out as long as there's no rules. I think it's getting tougher to make the argument in terms of housing affordability that deregulation is a sustainable strategy. Like it feels pretty problematic to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm in general somebody who's not a big fan of regulation or government intervention in just about anything. And
Tell us more, Dave.
it's a big surprise. I know it's a big reveal. We probably should have had a sounder before I had that. But in this particular case, I don't see too many downsides to limiting the ability of big corporations or hedge funds coming in and buying or even creating housing additions from an empty field to primarily just build rentals at that point. I don't think that's a good use of resources that are available for the everyday citizen. I mean, probably a great return for the hedge funds, but in this particular case, they can figure out another way to make money.
Kristen, we're treading on a topic that I feel like we're all on the periphery of, and we don't have a ton of expertise in, which is what makes good radio. Mm-hmm. By the way, that is always the case on radio. It's just how good are people tricking you into think they really do understand it. What do you think the impact is of domestic investment companies doing this versus foreign investment entities doing this? I feel like sometimes the foreign entities are demonized out of some jingoism or something, right? Like there's some element of it there. But Dame, I don't know. Help me understand. Like wealth is being built, but then the wealth is being offshored. Is that the issue?
Isn't it just a function of like the enemy, like it's just easier to say like, I can't believe that whatever foreign nation is like coming in and buying US soil is like fundamentally is the problem. What happens to the everyman? Is it the same as having a US company come in and build a bunch of rentals?
That's my point. That's what right. I'm going, okay, well, if the problem's the housing affordability, is this a national security issue? I think people try to make, it doesn't feel that way to me. It just feels like the market's getting knocked out of whack.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. This is pure speculation at this point.
Perfect.
And a guess.
Say more.
But, is there any obligation for foreign countries who own fields and grow crops to sell them into a U.S. market, or could they just ship them overseas for their own potential needs? Potentially keeping American families away from food products that they need.
That just took a dark turn. No one's running beans now.
Well, they are. They're just not staying here.
How long is he going to use this phrase?
Well, you guys, you teach me farming terms. I'm gonna work with him for a while.
The whole time he's driving a skid steer up and down his cul-de-sac.
I don't live in a cul-de-sac. I live in a courtyard. So we've solved nothing, which I think is great. It's really the hallmark of this show. Maybe we'll go here. Dame, I have noticed, and if you go back to 2005, 6, and 7, that when there are particular trends in the economy, like collateralized mortgage obligations and these sorts of things, they accelerate in use until something really breaks, right? Mm-hmm. So that is to say, hedge funds, investment groups buying large swaths of land and creating rentals or buying the farmland, that is an increasingly common thing. With interest rates coming back down, more leverage will be used. It'll happen again. Are we somehow accelerating to another bubble because of that until something breaks within that system?
Potentially. I mean, I've said for probably close to a couple decades at this point that the swings and the volatility that we're going to see in various markets in our country are only going to accelerate and be bigger than what we've been used to in the past, because of whether that's the availability of information, whether that's capital that's available, whether that's some strategery that's being played behind the scenes. It all just kind of is going to work in this direction, and it's going to be a wild ride for the average investor from here on out.
So, Kristen, you excited to be on the housing market?
Not even a little bit, guys.
Did we just ruin your day?
No, it's something that I've I've been looking in earnest for the next place for over a year, and it's every day.
Have you noticed in the last 12 months, like, I don't even know how you would measure this, but the base level of a home, some 12 months later, would that same home be any more expensive than it was then? Or is it just demands different than that?
Well, speaking of regulation, in the particular county that I'm looking to buy a home, no, because in my opinion of local regulation of ground protection.
Man, I know I live with this feeling every single day, but in this moment, I realize how little I know about anything. What is ground regulation?
So in the county that I'm hoping to buy a house, there is, I believe, what's called the Farmland Protection Act, which sounds really great on the surface, like protecting farm ground from being developed to be able to ensure that the next generation can continue to do this, the county can continue to do this. But as a result, it really drives up the price for a single family home that sits on anywhere between like 1 and 20 acres.
Who knew?
Me.
All right. So, Dame, here's how we started here today. We started with, if you have the opportunity to get a 15-year mortgage, you're going to pay substantially less interest. But there's a couple other elements of letting the 15-year mortgage guide the value of home you're pursuing. And you mentioned it this week here at work. It was, you're going to end up paying less in property tax because the value of your property is not as much. You're going to pay less in insurance costs. You're going to pay less in utility costs. And theoretically, less in maintenance and upkeep if the size is commensurate with that.
Less down payment as well. So you'll have more money in your pocket from the start, and you'll be in a better equity position at every step of the way.
So, yeah, it's a really interesting idea here, Kristen, that as the housing market gets less affordable and spins more out of control, somehow, some way, Dame and I came up with the idea that the solution is to settle for less.
Loved it.
Perfect. Solved. This show is called The Solvers. Coming up after the break, the biggest waste of money of the week. Well, if you had to subscribe to this show on Pay Money, it would be that. I'm Pete the Planner. It is a big, scary problem that I'm almost intimidated to really think about and put time into, because I think it's as ugly of an outcome. I don't have a lot of dystopian thoughts, but if I was going to pursue any path of dystopia, it would be this. It would be that housing will become so overwhelmed with corporate ownership that it's going to be unattainable for the average person.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you'll have to basically inherit your house from your parents.
And hope that they didn't reverse mortgage it along the way.
Oh, jeez. Are you just salting wounds?
Sorry.
Dame, how did I get to a dystopian place today?
Welcome.
We have our
Join us.
quarterly board meeting on Monday here at the headquarters. And maybe it's just my preparation for that that just got me reeling. Let's see. Jeremiah says, in March, Governor Holcomb, the governor of Indiana, signed the bill blocking out Chinese and Russian ownership of Indiana farmland. Hey, we were talking about this before the show. I'm curious, listeners in the live stream, if I got a notable politician to be on the show to talk about their personal finances, would that be of interest to you? I find it interesting, but I don't know. I'm weird. Yeah.
A clarifying question.
Sure.
I think the answer is definitely yes, but assuming they're actually gonna like not be politician-y about it. Like, I want to actually know some stuff, man.
Yeah, I think I can get it out of them.
Okay.
I've accounted for that in the math here. I think I can do it in an approachable way. And I think it's about not talking numbers. I think you can learn a lot about a person's personal finances without using a single number. And if you do use numbers, use percentages, and you can still get a lot done. Like, here's the question I want to know, and here's why this came up. I was driving from that networking event downtown yesterday. I was driving up Meridian. They drove by the governor's mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, Governor Holcomb moved in there however many years ago. He's moving out in the next couple of months for the new governor to move in. How's that all work? Did he keep his house that he lived in, or did he sell it? And then does he clearly doesn't, I don't think, have to pay rent to live in the governor's mansion. I wouldn't think. But then he just keep paying his mortgage, but his salary was probably less than it was in his other job. I just want to know how all that works.
Who owns the mansion?
Dang.
The people.
China.
China.
The soybean industry.
Mm.
Running bean.
It's a beautiful mansion, beautiful property.
It is.
I
Anyway,
just feel like I need to talk to Jeremiah now.
I know.
Jeremiah will send you a link. You can be a guest on his show.
Jeremiah, maybe we could do what do they call, a crossover podcast where you and I interview a politician about their finances. I feel like you'd agitate them, though, with all due respect, Jeremiah. I feel like, I know your sensibility around libertarianism, which I, agree with a lot of times, but I feel like you're going to be wired to really poke the bear there. I can see it. It's happening in the comments.
It's already there.
Jeremy notes, Tom, 20-year loan originator here. I'm with you. Most are not disciplined enough, but an option over the last couple of years, the spread has been maybe 25%. Earlier in the show, in the comments, Tom, oh man, their guys are just going back and forth.
Yeah,
I'm not reading.
Yeah.
Pete is uninterested at this time.
Yeah, I mean, did you see the size of that paragraph?
Yeah.
If you send me an email longer than 4 sentences.
You sent us a 50-sentence email this week.
A lot of bullets, though.
Kristen said that was passive aggressive.
Because it was.
It wasn't.
Really? You thought it was?
Okay, here's the thing. We can talk about it. A lot of people put stuff on my calendar because that's the nature of what happens around here. And so it might be like, oh, Pete, I promised someone you could speak in Las Vegas in November. Or, Pete, I told someone you're going to be in Florida in December. And it's like, whatever, fine, I don't care. But what happens is in the time that someone commits to that, they don't put it on the calendar. And so things get double booked. And so this just started happening more and more. And so I just sent out hey, here's a good process. And Kristen was like, oh, that was passive aggressive. And I was like, I went to the person who was the last malfeasant. And I said, hey, I'm going to send this group email. I don't want you to feel attacked because it's happening with everybody. Anyway. And now I'm talking about on the air. That's passive aggressive. No one cares. Quite literally. Kristen shut her brain off.
I still think the whole thing, it's because we disagree.
She's looking at houses.
No, I got distracted because Candace sent me slides for a webinar I forgot I have to do.
Oh, maybe she put a hold on your calendar.
She did.
Kristen's like, sorry, I was distracted. I was leaving a Glassdoor review. All right. Oh, this is a fun place to live and work. In 3, 2. I almost hit end stream. Hold on. 3, 2. This week's biggest waste of money of the week right here on the Pete the Planner show is finding it. Everyone calm down. This
It's
Hermes So Black Matte Alligator Birkin bag. Kristen, you were reacting?
I said it's a Birkin. I knew.
Legend holds that when Hermes, is somebody saying that? Hermes?
Nobody
Chief
knows.
Executive Jean-Louis Dumas was seated near French actress Jane Birkin on a plane. Can I get a timeout?
Timeout.
How is the name Jane Birkin a French name? Sounds like she's from Des Moines. Anyway, on a plane in the early 80s, her bag spilled, and she mentioned a bag that was big enough to hold all her goods. Thus, the Birkin bag was born. Increasingly sought after, even as the price rose, it's become a fashion icon. This version was created with arches that echo the Mason's flagship store in Paris, crafted in bright orange leather on top of a mix of black matte alligator, black madam, and black sombrero leathers. The interior is finished in black chev leather with a slip pocket, while the exterior has 2 rolled up handles, a flap top, a turn lock closure, and a black PVD hardware. So the question is, this just went to auction and sold. How much does this purse costs?
Okay, so the thing with Birkins is when they're specialty, they either aren't as expensive or they're like over the moon expensive. So
I feel like Dame should guess first then, because
Okay.
Dame's not going to have any idea what's happening here.
I mean, this should be like a $35 bag at TJ Maxx.
Nailed it.
But I mean, I do know enough to know these are stupid expensive. And since it's unique, I'm going to go 50 grand.
Oh, it's more than that. A regular Birkin's like 40. So I'm going to say people actually liked this and it was $160,000.
$206,250. I like that the last bid, like, do I have $206,000? Yes. Do I have $206,250? And someone's like, yes. They're like, do I have $206,500? And someone's like, no way.
Ouch. Yeah.
That last 250? Are you kidding me? Not a chance. Dame, what's in the news this week?
The days of crossing Middle Earth to end a gym membership are almost over. The Federal Trade Commission finalized a new rule this week that aims to make subscription-based services as easy to cancel as they are to sign up for. The rule, called Click to Cancel, cracks down on the subscription tricks and traps that take advantage of our free trial forgetfulness and impatience with lengthy customer service calls. FTC Chair Linda Kahn said, under the rule, online memberships should take the same number of clicks to cancel as they do to initiate. You need to be able to cancel via the same methods you use for sign-up, but in-person sign-ups should also have remote cancellation options. And for free trials, companies need to be clearer about their auto-renewal policies and can't start charging customers without, quote, informed consent, which might just look like another box to check at sign-up. These protections are going to kick in about 6 months, but looking ahead, the rule should make it easier for regulators to sue companies with slippery subscriptions like Planet Fitness and HelloFresh, which are often mentioned in complaints filed with the FTC. Kahn and company are also pursuing subscription-related lawsuits against Amazon and Adobe.
Hardest subscription you've ever canceled? Dame?
Wall Street Journal.
Oh, that's a good one.
Kristen?
Planet Fitness.
The Indy Star. And here's the thing. I canceled it after they canceled my column. I stopped running my column and I was like, well, I don't need this drivel. And so I called, and it's like a 45-minute process. You can only do it on the phone, or you could when this happened. Mm-hmm. And the person's like, well, what's the reason for your cancellation? I said, do you want the truth? They said, yeah. And I said, you can't handle the truth. I said, look, I'm a columnist in this paper, and or was, and they're not running my column anymore. And they're like, so what should I put here? And I'm like, I just told you the story. Just literally told you the story. Dame, what else is in the news?
I will say the Wall Street Journal has made their process much easier since the first time I went round and round about it. Anyway,
how often do you cancel the Wall Street Journal? Well, the fifth time I've canceled it.
For a while, it was very frequently after the special ran out. Then you'd cancel and then re-up.
I cancel mine all the time.
Wait, you guys are those people?
Well, yeah. When the regular price is like $40, and the deal I have right now is $4 a month.
You guys read a blog about life hacks?
I'm not a Rockefeller.
The next time you find a plumber underneath your sink fixing a leak, there's a decent chance that person whose pants are losing the coverage battle might be a millionaire. Companies that specialize in home services like HVAC and electrical and plumbing companies are taking 6- and 7-figure paydays from private equity investors who see meaty returns in trades, according to the Wall Street Journal. Nearly 800 of these skilled trade businesses have been purchased by PE investors since 2022 per PitchBook, and that's likely an undercount. Owners aren't all looking for a way out, though. Ted Polk, managing director for the Boston-based investment banking firm Capstone Partners, told the Wall Street Journal that 9 out of 10 small business owners in the skilled trades field a decade ago were looking to cash out and retire. Today, only about a third of owners are taking the fat paycheck, but sticking on board to help the company grow. If you zoom out, this is the interesting part of the article. A recent study by the Harris Poll on behalf of the Intuit Credit Karma group revealed that 50% of Gen Z and 42% of millennials plan to move into so-called blue-collar jobs like welding, plumbing, and electrical work. As generative AI thrusts itself over businesses, 66% of Americans believe trade jobs have more security than corporate ones.
Well, that makes sense because there's a lot of foreign-owned properties that need to be fixed.
Right.
Yeah. As a callback to earlier in the show. Dame, this is not surprising. I mean, the trades being purchased by PE firms and like that's been going on for a long time, and it has escalated significantly. But there's still some locally owned businesses. There really are.
Not only trade firms, but like other professional firms as well, whether that's dentist's office or accounting firms. I mean, there's PE is just trying to get their hands in everything.
Kristen, have you noticed the trend of the show today? These large financial overlords buying all the homes and businesses, and what a dark show today.
I know. And us just regular people, we're just having a hard time, you know?
I'm of the people. I run beans every fall. Autumnal beans.
Chili doesn't count, Pete.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What else is in the news, Dave?
Efforts to reverse the baby shortage aren't working. Falling birth rates have hit Europe harder and faster than expected. Not even two countries that devote more resources to families than almost any other nation can fix the situation. Okay, tell me if this might change your mind to have another kid, Pete. Hungary offers lifetime income tax exemptions, subsidized minivans, and more than $150,000 in cheap loans, while Norway has generous parental leave and subsidized childcare. The reluctance to have kids is a fundamental cultural shift rather than a purely financial one, demographers say.
Yeah, exactly. Like yes, financially they're a pain in the areas, but then there's living with them, which is also troublesome. You know,
lifetime income tax exemption.
How much income tax?
Oh, it's just his lifetime income tax. I'm assuming all of it.
Kristen, if there were financial incentives for you to have children, would it move the needle at all?
You guys, it's not. I think that what your generation and the generation before you has done is talk about how hard it is to be parents, and you've straight scared millennials and Gen Z, even if they can afford it, out of ever wanting to be parents.
Lifetime income tax exemption and $200,000 to put towards a house.
I need a little more than that, I think.
Wow.
What about...
Things are expensive. That's barely even going to cover their travel sports.
So your take is that the reason millennials and Gen Z don't want to be parents is because of Gen X complaining about how hard it is to be parents?
Yes.
Wow. I had never considered that.
Ask childless millennials and Gen Z. Ask us. Yeah.
Maybe you just know how difficult you were as kids and you don't want to bring that on yourself.
Ask my mom.
Well, it's with that we'll take a 167-hour break. Thanks for listening. I'm sending you good vibes because good vibes are all that's in the budget. I'm Pete the Planner, and this is the Pete the Planner Show. Do you think that's the reason?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of people that are on the fence that are my age are legitimately concerned about the fact that it seems like parents are not happy being parents.
I find it hard to believe because parents aren't listened to in general, let alone on something about, don't tell me not to do that.
But no, I'm saying, I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. I'm saying that like people that I know that have children have made the people that I know who don't have children quite jaded about the joys of parenting.
Well, this is interesting, actually, right? Because I complain a lot about I'm driving to St. Louis, but the joys, I'll speak for myself, Dame. You can, I mean, I know we're the same person. The joys far outweigh the challenges. Like every It's the old, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. It's the same concept with children.
But as an observer, that increasingly doesn't seem like the case. And right there, I'm speaking for myself, but I will tell you, I've had this conversation with lots of people who've decided to not have children, who've actively made that decision to say, like, when I look at people who have children, it really doesn't seem like they're having a good time. And that's strictly observational.
And society dies. But I also don't feel like someone should be talked into having kids if they don't want them either.
Correct.
What's a little bribing between friends?
Can I raise a point that may both be true and judgmental and arguably aggressive? What part of this comes with the newer generation being more self-involved from a social media perspective and just like more self-indulgent about themselves? Like more, Dame, am I saying that right? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying.
Oh,
like more self-centered than previous generations.
I'll say it because it's about me, and that's why I'm allowed to say it. And I feel like you can't, is that I feel like myself and lots of my friends, we are just more selfish. Like, do I really want to give up this time for another human being? And the answer maybe is no. And I think people feel more open about like sharing that, like, hey, raising another human might be a very selfless thing. And I'm not sure that I want to embark on that.
Yeah, the weird thing is, it's like I see nothing wrong with that perspective, right? It's like, it's not like, oh, your guys are doing it wrong. I just think it's interesting that collectively it feels like an entire generation or two has moved that way, which that is interesting because individuals have always made that type of decision. I know plenty of people my age who have chosen not to have children, and it's fine. No one cares. But when the entire generations do it, it is peculiar.
Well, it's because it's a combination of things. It's also the increasing unaffordability combined with this, like, is this really worth it?
The good news is when Gen X dies, housing will get a lot more affordable because there'll be a glut of housing for the 75 people left on Earth.
True.
True.
I'll finally be able to buy a house.
And we'll leave it with this. Andy said in the live stream, we had to give DirecTV my grandpa's death certificate for them to cancel his service. All right. Well, I think you win.
That's so aggressive.
It's so aggressive. Second long show in a week, or 2 weeks in a row of long shows is what I mean. I don't know. It's time to go. Hey, everybody, stay getting money.